Gohatto movie review. So I just got done reading Donald Ritchie's Guide to Japanese Cinema, and I mentioned that I was hoping to use that as a guide for my future film viewing in Japan. And then here I am with the first movie that I came to my attention directly because of that book. It's another movie about the Shinsengumi, which I've been talking about a couple times on this channel so far. I reviewed Romulus Hillsborough's book on the Shinsengumi, the history book. Also the movie When the Last Sword is Drawn, which is about the Shinsengumi. And now this movie. Donald Ritchie actually summarizes the themes of this movie very succinctly in his book. So rather than attempt to summarize it myself, I'll just quote his summary. So, quote, Gohatto repeats the theme of director Oshima that love destroys. Yet, by 1999, heterosexual love on screen, through repeated exposure, had already lost its transgressive power. Oshima therefore turned to another expression of desire. The society at the film's core is the Shinsengumi, an elite group of swordsmen commissioned in 1863 to counter anti-shogunate activities. They are fanatically loyal, think as a group, and attempt to subdue personal feelings. Into their midst is enrolled an extremely handsome youth. Passion grips the all-male Shinsengumi, discipline disappears, and death results. Now, I checked with some of my Japanese students about the historical accuracy of the movie, and apparently it's not very historically accurate. Although there was an incident that loosely inspired this film, with an act of unrequited homosexual love in the Shinsengumi, which led to betrayal and death. That's not the incident that's portrayed here, but there was a real incident that which this film takes its loose inspiration. Apparently this film is supposed to be a satire on the ultra-masculine Shinsengumi by portraying them all as closet homosexuals. And then another element of satire is added by portraying them, many of them, by having middle-aged actors portray many of the Shinsengumi. In real life, most of them died young. But here in this movie, they're being portrayed by middle-aged actors. Among them, Beat Takeshi is the most famous one, at least to Westerners. The story for this movie is apparently based on a novel by Japanese historical novelist Shiba Ryotaro. I reviewed one of his books previously, The Last Shogun. This particular book hasn't been translated into English yet. But given Shiba Ryotaro's reputation, I'm guessing the actual novel itself must have been factual, and then the movie changed things around. I don't know. But Shiba Ryotaro does have a reputation for writing very historically accurate historical fiction. This may be a little bit of a stretch, but when watching this movie, I was reminded of an essay I had read by Ian Burrama on Robert Baden-Powell. So Robert Baden-Powell was a British military hero and also the founder of the Boy Scouts. He was an all-around outdoorsman, but he was also a rumored closet homosexual. So Ian Burrama examines the life of Baden-Powell and then compares it to the dandyism that was popular, apparently, among the later Japanese samurai. Later period, I think, being about the same time as the Shinsengumi. And Ian Burrama, by comparing dandyism among samurai and the life of Robert Baden-Powell, asks the question, as one gets further and further into the cult of masculinity, and more repelled by anything soft or feminine, Is it possible that at some point all this masculinity might in fact result in its opposite, namely dandyism and homosexuality? That's a misquote because I no longer have the copy of the essay in front of me, but I think that's what he was getting at. And I wonder if that's what this movie is getting at as well. Because the Shinsengumi are all like manly, masculine male samurai. At a certain point, maybe they no longer want the company of women because they only want manly things. And then what you would normally associate with the... Well, I want to be careful how I choose my words here. The implication being that ultra masculinity, although we would associate it with, we wouldn't associate it with homosexuality. The implication being maybe that's where it's headed if you take it to its logical extreme. I don't know. I get the feeling maybe that's what the directors were hinting at with this movie. Maybe I'm reading into it. The story is based on real characters, but it's largely fictionalized. So the politics and the whole fall of the shogun and the Meiji Restoration are there, but they're mostly in the background and they're unimportant to the story. There is a lot of names that get dropped, and I recognized a lot of them because I'd been reading up on this period recently. So that was cool for me to catch those names, being like, I got that reference. I know who that name is. But you don't need it. You can enjoy this movie without a lot of historical background. Be forewarned ahead of time, though, that this is one of those movies where the ending is ambiguous. Not everything is spelled out for you. You know the kind of movie I mean? The kind of movie where you're like, what? Is that the end? What is that supposed to mean? And then if you're like me, if you have the same personality as me, then you spend another 30 minutes on the internet reading up on everyone's theories about what the movie meant. And in fact, if you go into the IMDb page for this movie and look at their discussion board, there's a very lively discussion about what the end of this movie means, what happened at the end of this movie, and what it's supposed to mean. I'm not going to spoil it, but I'm just going to say, be forewarned. If you hate those kind of endings, you're not going to like this movie.